Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 3Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, featuring yours truly, the old salty dog, John Martin, and the captain of our pirate ship, none other than Ted Yoho. It looks like you're, I say at home, but you got so many homes, Ted, but it looks like you're back in the Sunshine State once again, sir. Welcome.
I am in the Sunshine State in our home base in the beautiful town of Welaka, Florida, right on the St. Johns River. And come one, come all, but don't stay.
Yeah, I've always misunderstood that name, Welaka, because I've been there, and they don't seem to lack for much. So I don't know about the Welaka part, but anyway, peace to you. I'm coming to you from Fort Hawthorne, Florida, I call it. All right, well, we're going to get right into this thing.
Yep.
We talked on our show on Monday about the impending elections that happened on Tuesday and what it would mean and everything else. Well, I don't think there was a lot of really big surprises, but we'll talk about it in a minute. But Mamdani, no surprise really whatsoever. He won. He won solidly. And, it's potentially, as you can see in that meme right there, going to be a boom to Florida because they're going to make him Realtor of the Year, apparently, because the people are going to be flooding down here. I'll tell you this real quick, and I'll turn it over to you, Ted. I was watching the president this week on Wednesday, I think it was actually. He was down at a some type of economic summit, if you will, down in Miami, and a lot of people from all over the world there. But he had the mayor of Miami-Dade was there,
right?
And he spoke, and he actually said that they were, and he wasn't joking. He said that his sources tell him that real estate in the Miami area is projected to go up from 30 to 70%, depending on the location, directly because of the election results in New York. And he was not joking. Anyway, what are your general thoughts about what happened with the New York? And we'll talk a little deeper about it in a minute, but go ahead.
Well, going back to the mayor of Miami, that is not a joke. Look at the Yoho rentals to go from New York to come to Florida. People are moving. They're going to move out in droves. In fact, they've lost over 631 residents. And the report I have was from 2020 to now. And I think it's higher than that, really, because I think these are outdated numbers. But I think you're going to see that. The election, like you said, it's what we kind of anticipated. Wasn't what we wanted. But you look at the candidate field. I mean, you had Mario Cuomo, and then you had, or Andrew Cuomo, and then you had Swally. And I mean, it was just a terrible candidate field. And then you had Moran Zidani, who was very charismatic, very articulate, good-looking guy. The people just went to him in droves, and it was the Goliath, David against Goliath type of scenario, and people rallied around David, and it kind of happens over and over again. And it's I think it's interesting. I know you're going to go into a speech. The first person he kind of edified was Eugene Debs, who was the founder of the American Socialist Political Activists back in the early 1900s.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we get too deep into it, I want to say something about the candidates. You mentioned the candidates because I agree with everything you said, but Swilla was hammered quite a bit for not dropping out of the race and all that. And I can understand why they were saying it, not getting into all that. But the reality is, if you look at the numbers, even if he had dropped out, and you assume, which I don't think you can do, that every single person that voted for him would have voted for Como, I don't think that that's a reasonable assumption, because I don't think they would have voted for Mamdani, but a portion of them wouldn't have voted at all. And you do the math on it, and there's no way no one could have beaten in that field, no matter what. They could not have beaten Mamdani this time. I think that needs to be said.
I find it really interesting because Mamdani's whole thing was how America's broke and, the American dream's gone, but yet he's an example of the American dream. Somebody that comes from nowhere and can achieve in this country, that's the American dream. And, it's going to be interesting how he navigates New York City and runs it. It's going to be interesting. I mean, this is the experiment of American politics. It's an experiment in self-government, and let's see where it goes. I don't like it, but I don't live there, and there's a reason I don't live there.
Well, if you look at, and we'll talk more about the other elections in a moment, but there are some crossovers for sure. And one thing about Mamdani, which is positive for him, I suppose, and potentially positive for the Democrats, but really troubling on another level, is that a good chunk of his support were young people, very young people, a lot of women, but mostly young people, that, between the 18 and like 25, and then the 25 to 35, all of them. And the thing about the 18 to 25, Ted, that really troubles me is a good chunk of those people are not going to be instantly impacted by his policies because they don't pay a lot of bills. I'm not saying they don't have expenses, but a lot of them are people who really are pretty privileged. And if you break the statistics down somewhat, the working class people and a lot of poor working class people voted for, in fact, Cuomo. So the types of people that came out and supported Mamdani and gave him really the huge edge is a little troubling in the nature of their, I would say, ignorance of what our system is really about. That's what I would say.
It really is, John. And I think people are in for a rude awakening. I mean, he talked about all these things he's going to do, and, free, a rent freeze, faster and freer buses, free universal child care, and the list goes on. And these are things politicians promise in the beginning of their campaign, but they get bogged down in the mire of politics. And Kathy Hochul, I was just listening to her. We were fighting to reduce rent. We were fighting to increase pay, and we're doing this. So she's been doing that for however long she's been in office. And the governor before that said the same thing, and so forth. And it's not something you can deliver to the people. And we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Hochul. So there was some news that just broke literally as we were about to come on the air that it's been anticipated, but Elise Stefanik formally announced that she is now running for governor of New York.
I tell you what, I got a lot of respect for Elise. She's a no BS type of person, and she gets stuff done. I mean, she's a mover and shaker. It's just, can she rally enough New Yorkers around her? And I think she will after this election. I think it was a culture shock for that state and a wake-up call. Wake up. I wish her the best of luck.
Well, so you mentioned that. So about the Mamdani, and he takes office January 1st, I do believe. But what would you say are the predictions you would have right now of where New York City will most likely be a year from now? I know that's kind of unfair, but if you could look into a crystal ball, what do you think you would see?
Yeah, if I was any good at predictions, I'd be on my yacht.
I hear you.
New York City, a year from now, I think you're going to see a rise in a short bump in the excitement around him, kind of like you saw with Obama. And in fact, a lot of his speech was hope and change throughout the speech. You had hope in the beginning, and then we're going to change things. I think what you're going to see in a year from now is much of the same. I think you're going to see an exodus of people. In fact, I think it'll be a worse situation. I think you're going to see an exodus of people, those people that are providing jobs for the working class. The working class and the middle class are exiting New York now. you're going to see more of that. As you just mentioned, he's going to be the best real estate agent in Florida. And U-Haul probably give him a prize for the influencer that created the most sales and rentals for U-Haul. And I think what you're going to be left with is a class of people that believe in the socialist mantra that they've been talking about, and we know that doesn't work. And as we've talked about before, all communists are socialists until socialism, and then they move into communism. And so, New York, be wary of what you voted in. New York City, I'll say, not the state of New York. It's going to be interesting. And again, John, this is an ongoing experiment in self-government, and let's see what he's going to do. The people got what they wanted, so they got what they asked for. So we'll see what.
Yeah, and I think it's important also to keep in mind that the overall turnout was average at best. I think there was roughly about 2 million people that voted in the election, something to that effect. And a little over half, like 51% of them, voted for Mamdani. I think, and this my prediction, is a short term and unfortunately long term. I think the most immediate thing we're going to see is affects public servants like the first responders, police officers, because we've already seen. Now, he did not say 100% that he was doing this because of Mamdani, but I don't know if you saw this, but the head of the fire department, I don't know if they call him the fire department commissioner, he has turned in his resignation literally that next day on Wednesday, and has said he's going to be out coincidentally by the end of the year. And of course, Houston, the city of Houston, immediately ran advertisements trying to lure police officers from New York City to come on down to Texas. And we know that DeSantis has been doing versions of that, not just New York, but in general for a while. So I really think the first thing you're going to see is a total demoralization of the police department and the first responders, including the fire department people. I think you're going to see a real exodus, and it's going to look much different a year from now, unfortunately, for the city of New York.
You know what, John? That's a great point, and that's something I think you're absolutely right on. I think you will see that. You know, and Mamdani even came out and said that we're going to work with our police department, and we're going to work with the homelessness and the mental health issues. You know, they're not talking about policing, and yeah, that is a component that definitely needed to be handled back in the past. But if you start stripping the police of their authority to be able to do what they do, and then you take away their immunity, when they get into a situation like that, you're going to have a mass exodus of that. And you're going to be left with a bunch of social workers that want to give everybody hugs. And we know how that works.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you're on a subway, and I know you've probably been on. I lived up in New York for almost 5 years in the mid 80s. And I tell you, the one thing you really don't need on a subway is a social worker. You need cops, man. I don't care what, because you don't.
You
some
need
of these
Daniel
people,
Perry's.
You need cops. So there is one potential piece of good news about it for Donald Trump specifically, in that Mar-a-Lago, if the predictions about Florida become accurate, Mar-a-Lago will be worth a little more than 18 million. You know, he'll probably be worth at least 20 million now, Ted.
No, I think you'll see it jump up. Heck, you're going to see a mass exodus, and I think you're going to unfortunately see many of them come to Florida. For the right price, they can come to Weelac, and I'll let them own a new house.
I hear you, man. I can probably rent out the tool shed I got here. But
yeah, really.
So you mentioned Mamdani's speech, and we're going to play his acceptance speech, if you will, in just a minute. The whole thing is about 26 minutes. We're only going to play a short snippet. I would encourage people to watch the whole speech.
I would encourage people too. I mean, it's a very well articulated and very passionate, a lot of emotion in it, and listen to the emotion of the crowd. And the face of America is changing. I don't like it, but we can't stop that. We can fight to preserve the founding principles and the core values. That's what needs to change. And that's what needs to stay. That can't change.
Yeah, well, like you say, to his credit, the man is extremely, and I mean extremely charismatic. I can see why people who are just kind of not really studying what he's actually saying, but how he's saying it, would be going, yeah, I can get that. You know, he's very his performance art is top of the thing. His victory speech was impressive, and like you were kind of alluding to, his followers, and you won't see that too much on the short version we're playing, but they were ecstatically following him.
Oh, yeah.
And if you look at some of the coverage, there were quite a few media people from like MSNBC that were in there, and they were like, you know, kids at a frat party themselves, and they're supposed to be journalists. So,
I didn't see that part, but I'm sure that is.
It shows it. Go ahead, Ted. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I thought you were going to roll the video. Go ahead.
Yeah, we will in just 1 second.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, let me add there.
Go ahead.
There's just, like you said, I encourage people to watch the video, take notes, and then compare it to what he's saying. He was saying the era of divided politics, in a moment of political darkness, where he goes on and says, we'll prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve or too small to care about. And he's talking about how they're going to go and they're going to unite people. We're going to put an end. Oh, shoot. Sorry, I got my wrong. We will not allow hate or division, but then goes on to say, if you're a member of the trans community, the immigrant community, or one of the many black people that Donald Trump has fired from a federal job, a single mom waiting for the price of groceries to come down, we're going to fight for you. So he's creating division as he's calling for not having hate and division and not allowing it. He's doing the very same thing, and it's very good politics the way he does it, but it's very dangerous too.
Yeah, well, not only does he want to maintain the whole sanctuary city, but he's actually proposing $65 million of taxpayer money to fund transgender surgery for everyone, including minors. That's one of his stated policy goals, $65 million. He specifically lists that. But we're going to play a snippet of his acceptance speech here and listen to what he says kind of at the tail end of this clip about his, I guess, vision for what government can do. Let's play this and we'll come back and talk about it.
Problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about. For years, those in City Hall have only helped those who can help them. But on January 1st...
I mean, Ted, man, I know you're all for huge government, but...
yeah.
But Mamdani says, literally looks in the camera and tells you that there is no problem too big for government to solve and no problem too small for government not to be involved in. So that literally tells you that government is cradle to grave, your whole answer for every problem you have, which is absolutely not socialism, it's communism.
Well, if you want to see the results, if you want to see the results of that, look at the Great Society of Lyndon Johnson and what it has done to people that have fallen into that and allowed the government to be the answer to their problems. You know, he ran a campaign and succeeded on the American dream because of the system here, but that he wants to tear it down. And he says again, we will refuse the hate and division of past politics that's gone on. And then he singles out Trump again. And then he says that we together, he talks about hope and change, not connected right together, but hope. And then later on, he's talking about the changes they're going to make. And we're ushering a generation change. If we embrace brave new course rather than fleeing, we can respond to the oligarchy and authoritarians with strength He goes on, and after all, if anyone can show a nation betrayed, and this is again the hatred. After all, if anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And he goes on, and so he talks about we got to get away from this hate and division, but he creates it, and it's like, hey, we don't like it over here. Puts his arms around the minorities and the different classes that he singles out. And he goes, we don't like this, but we're going after this guy because he caused it. And it's divisional politics again. And the results, we kind of know what's coming for New York. And as you said, those people are already leaving, and you're going to see the working and middle class leave New York. And so what are you left with?
Yeah, well, you're left with a lot of poor folks that'll be in worse shape than they've ever been. And what really troubled me about the statement you just said, because I agree with you about what he said about defeating Trump by defeating him with the city that gave him the ability to rise, and making sure that not only can he not rise, but he adds on top of that no other, a future Donald Trump could rise, which means that you're not, that really is the dash, the water on it, the putting out the fire of the American dream. Because one thing about Donald Trump, long before he got into politics, everybody loved the guy. Everybody did. And everybody wanted not only to be like Mike, so to speak, but to be like DJT. A lot of black people, for instance, a lot of rappers, athletes, all that kind of stuff, they loved hanging around Donald Trump because they wanted to be like Trump.
Right. And Mamdani says we need to dismantle the system that gave rise to Donald Trump so it never happens again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oddly for itself.
Which means the end of aspiring to be, the best you can be and financial reward. But if anybody is thinking that he wants to, because he's about immigration and whether or not they want to be a sanctuary city, and I know there will be some people that'll say, oh, okay, we're a nation of immigrants and all that, and all that's true. But if you really listen to what Mamdani is saying, he's talking about weaponizing illegal immigrants and not only taking care of them, but weaponize them.
He sure is.
Listen to what he says in this next video, and we'll come back and talk about it.
With the strength it fears, not the appeasement it craves. After all, if anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one. So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, words for you. Turn the volume up. New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants. And as of tonight, led by an immigrant. So hear me.
And Ted, as you mentioned earlier in the show, Mamdani's story is the American dream. It shows you that everything he's bashing actually works to him to rise up to the level that he is. But he is literally threatening. If you listen to all the different groups he's saluting, and I'm not opposing to any of the Yemenis, shopkeepers, or whatever, but he mentions everybody but American citizens, period. And that should scare everybody.
That should be, because that should be uniting people. Because again, if you look at the founding principles, core values, they're not Republican, Democrat, Somali, Yemeni, Irish, English. They're none of that. They're American principles. They're not a party. They're not owned by a culture. It's owned by Americans. And that's where he is separating people. He says, we will put an end to the culture of corruption that has allowed billionaires like Trump to avoid taxation and exploit tax codes or tax breaks. Think of Letitia James. You know, she did the same thing that Trump was accused with on the mortgages. Actually, she did worse. And it's just, you know, it's sophistry. And sophistry is you tell a lie long enough and big enough to where people believe it. And so he's saying that to his base, but he's wanting to take away the American dream. He doesn't want them to exceed. He wants to be minions of government.
Yeah, and really, when I was listening to him talking just now, and I heard it before, it popped in my head that one of the most ironic things about it is he mentions Yemeni bodega owners, right? How are they going to be impacted when everything is free? When you have free government-run grocery stores next to the Yemeni bodega, who's going to win that? Certainly not the Yemeni bodega guy. I mean, and one more thing, Ted, he talks about taxing. I don't know how many billionaires there are in New York, but I did see a statistic that people who earn over $1 billion a year in New York already pay 47% of the taxes right now.
The numbers used to be if you made over $250,000 and above, you paid about 90% of the taxes in America. 90%. And so they're driving those people out. It's going to be interesting. I mean, this is going to be we're going to watch an experiment in self-government. And the people voted in what they think they wanted, and we'll see how that turns out.
Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the broader election in different parts,
right,
and whether it was a bellwether and some of what it may mean, may not mean, and that type of thing. We hope you'll want to become a sponsor of our show. Look at the little tagline that says Contact Freddie. Make that call. We certainly need your support. Ted, take us to break.
No, we really do. We appreciate it. We've talked to businesses that are coming on board, and we want you to be one of those. And look forward to getting you more information here when we come back. Take care.
We'll be right back.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Meldon Law, the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators.
The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company,
Shoot GTR,
On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Ward, that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth!
All bees poop.
A warthog. He's going to come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
Yeah, every time we see that commercial break, Ted, I think about you with that warthog, our old mentor, Ward Scott. You know, can you imagine? Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. So the warthog is coming at you like that, like somebody in the subway. And to intervene on the warthog, they put a social worker up there saying, like Biden says, just don't. I think when the warthog comes after you, you're going to want more than a social worker. I'm telling you.
I want Daniel Perry there. John, you know, when we started, or when Mamdani started his speech, again, he referenced Eugene Debs gave praise to him. And it was like a dream come true, because that guy he founded the Socialist Party here in America. And then he quotes Jawaharlal Nehru, who I can't really find a lot about. I don't know if I spelled his name right. And then Fierro Aguardia, I think he said. And he's quoting all these people. And I'm like, I'm not hearing George Washington, Ben Franklin, James Madison. I'm not hearing him quote for the future our past founding fathers. He wanted to reimagine America, or New York City, in his view. And when I looked at him towards the end of his speech, he's gearing up to run for president.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can look around. Mamdani can't, because he's not at least now, because he's not a naturalized native-born American. But sure. But if you look at like the who's who of people that want their selfies done with him, it's like, I mean, it's the who's who of the terrorist watch list, really. I mean, it literally is. Sure. You mention anybody, like, for instance, he says about the river to the sea and globalize the infantada, and he kind of sugarcoats all that. But then he's hanging out with the dude that literally is calling for the death of Jews and bringing infantada here, and the guy that was one of the masterminds of the original bombing of the World Trade Center, and is calling for literally jihad all across America. That Iman, he's hanging out with him. I mean, he literally is hanging out with the who's who of the terrorist most wanted list.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the all-star list of American politics, not politics, but the heroes of America. He's not doing that for sure.
Yeah, and since we're still talking about Mamdani, I thought about this earlier about, as you've mentioned it many times, if you kind of want to see what the potential future of the United States is, and New York City specifically, all you got to do is look at London and look at England and what's been happening over there, because they've been on the same track for a while. And they're literally locking people up for posting on Facebook now in England.
They really are.
So that is the direction we are heading if we go that total route. And I think New York is going to resemble London pretty quickly, and that's not a good thing.
No doubt. Not just New York, but all of your major metropolitan areas that have a large mixed population. This is what you get, because they become that collection of mixed population becomes greater than the normal majority, and it's going to change the face of America. And again, John, we talked about that. I can't change it. You can't change it. The only people that can change it is the American people, but that'll even be hard to do that. Again, I want to overemphasize the things that we can fight to preserve are the core values and the founding principles that gave us the Declaration of Independence and our constitutional republic. If we lose that, the opportunity for the American dream that Mamdani is living goes away for everybody. And there will not be an opportunity to build a dream and become as wealthy as you choose or not choose to do. That goes away because you're going to be dictated by a federal government that is going to be authoritarian more than you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, and
a good example, before you go, a good example of that is go back to COVID. look at what the federal government did under Biden with the mask mandates, mandatory vaccines. You had to have proof of vaccines. You had to walk 6 feet apart. That is government authoritarianism we've never experienced in this government in our lifetime. And that's coming with what they've just voted into New York City. It'll start there, but it'll spread like a cancer.
Yeah, well, and I started trying to pull it up because we're going to talk about Pelosi here in a few minutes. But there's a video where Pelosi was holding a fundraiser during the height of COVID in her vineyard, where her and her husband own a vineyard, and there is probably at least 100, probably 200 people at this event. It's all black tie. They're sitting outside at these tables, and they're all maskless except for the help. The help is going around in masks and serving them. They're all masked up. But the Democrats, all these Democrats and all these millionaires and probably a few billionaires, as Uncle Bernie would say, they're not masked up. So I'll try to find that and post it on our.
Well, you know what? 2 points out of that. One is that shows you what they think of the help. They're the serfs. They're
how to protect us from them. Heaven forbid.
Yeah, it's their disease. They're dangerous. So we've got to cover up whatever they're spewing out of their nasal passages. The other thing, John, is you can't smell fine wines through a mask. So you've got to take it off so you can appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I know this will shock you because we were talking about Mamdani. You always trigger something in my head. There's a double standard out there, Ted. And I know that you go, what? Double standard?
No,
Mamdani literally at the end of his acceptance speech lists all these things. And then he says, and beyond that, I am a Muslim, like that. And I'm not anti-Muslim. I'm just pointing out that they hammer Donald Trump as being this like Christian conservative, right-wing Christian nationalist or whatever. No one really thinks that Donald Trump is an ultra-Christian. He even talks about, he's even had ministers tell him, I wish you'd lay off, Franklin Graham, the cursing a little bit and all that. Donald Trump, I'm not saying he's not a Christian, but can you imagine if Donald Trump stood up there and said, yes, we're going into Nigeria because don't forget, I am a Christian. Oh, they would literally be another crucifixion and they'd be crucifying him. But Mamdani says, I am a Muslim. And the press, let alone the people, are just, I mean, is there a slight double standard, Ted?
Oh, absolutely. And it tells you what side the press is on. They should be celebrating a lot of what President Trump is doing, but the press, the media, the big tech companies, they're all working against him, but they're praising people like Mamdani. And it just shows you the direction of the country and who's really controlling it. It's just funny how this is going. It's not funny. It's just interesting how this is transpiring right in front of us. We are definitely seeing a transition in America. And John, this doesn't stop with this election. This is just the beginning of it. And, people thought the MAGA movement won and they're all happy and we're cheering on MAGA. But you can't let your guard down. In fact, we've got to run harder now because they've got momentum going on their side. And it's hard to stop momentum. And, he's talking about he wants to get rid of waste and fraud and bloated bureaucracy and make these programs work better. But yet when you look in Minneapolis, the food stamp fraud, the Food for Peace program, $250 million was going to, and I don't want to just single them out, but it was a Somalian community-run program that over $250 million in fraud, and I think less than $2,000 went to feed hungry people. And they caught the person that was in charge of that program getting on a plane going back to the Middle East. And so that's a waste and fraud he wants to get rid of, but yet they're the ones right in the middle of it. And when I say they, it happened to be a Muslim woman or a Muslim organization. And this is not to say anything bad about the organization. This is what happens when you don't assimilate and become Americans. You become different factions in America, and that way their power is diluted unless they come together like they did with Mamdani. And when they do, they're working against the norms and the beliefs of a constitutional republic. And it's another nail to destroy this, or another cut in the many that we have to destroy this country.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the election results a little bit broader. I mean, obviously, Mamdani is getting most of the wind sucked in there, and rightfully so. But you had big victories, if you will. I'm just going to say it. It is, and I'm not in denial. In New Jersey, governor's race went a Democrat all the way. Virginia, a clean slate there. California had that big ballot initiative about the redistricting. It won overwhelmingly. I'm going to ask you in a second, Ted, whether you think any of them will quote bellwether. But I do think one thing you got to keep in mind, it was blue states, generally speaking, staying blue, really, at the end of the day. I'm not saying they're not issues, but what are your thoughts about the impact, or the bellwether, if you will, canary in the coal mine kind of thing, about the midterms and Republicans and conservatives in general?
Well, I think what you're going to see, it was the hatred for Donald Trump and the, portraying him as a billionaire and a heavy hand. And he does. He's been unlike any other president we've had. So if you look at California, it was a big win for the redistricting, and they won overwhelmingly on this Newsom proposal to redistrict California. But if you go back 5-10 years ago, when they voted in California to form a redistricting coalition committee that was bipartisan, that won overwhelmingly. But they've used politics and the hatred of Trump to change that. When you look at Virginia, here you have Winsome Sears was running, a black lady Marine, the attorney general, I believe she is, or the lieutenant governor. She lost that race. Obama is out there politicking for Abigail Spanberger, who was the one that was saying that we need to keep men and or boys and women's sports. And the attorney general there, Jay Jones, here's a guy that made just a vile threat. He wanted to shoot the guy in the head, the Republican Speaker of the House, and he hated him more than he did Hitler and Pol Pot. And then he says, I'd love to see his children die in his mother's arms. These are the guys they voted in, the party of anti-hate and things like that. They're doing that. And the same thing with the person that won the governor's race in New Jersey. The whole idea is that party has brought in those type of people that are angry, they're hateful, and they have violence. And they're telling us how bad the Republicans, or how bad Trump is.
Yeah, well,
it's a wake-up call.
This exit polling stuff is kind of fascinating. I don't pretend to be an expert in it to know exactly how they calculate it, but you mentioned the attorney general and the text about shooting the Speaker of the House in Virginia, with a couple of bullets, including his kids. The exit polling was fascinating about that, because basically a little over half of the people that were interviewed said that should be disqualifying for him to do that. But almost 60%, they figured somehow, of the people that actually said that turned around and still voted for him. Something to that effect. It's like, how do you fathom that?
I don't know. It's interesting. I know when you look at the poll numbers, and you see the young women overwhelmingly are socialists, and they voted that way. I would like to see the survey go further and say, what's your level of education? Not that really matters. What is your income? Are you employed? Are you on government benefits? Which ones? And then see where they're at, because if they are in that group, are they the ones that are voting themselves a paycheck?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know, just to kind of show you how crazy voters can be, we talked a little bit about this in a couple of shows previously, but a big election result here locally in Gainesville, the GRU regional utility thing, it passed to go back under the control of the city commission of Gainesville. And without getting into too many details, what that literally means is the people voted for their utility rates to go up, because that's one thing that's absolutely going to happen, because that was one of the reasons why it shifted out of there, and people should have known that, but they voted to literally raise their own utility rates. Kind of shows you that crazy.
The City Commission of Gainesville running the GRU has been nothing but a disaster. I moved to Gainesville in 1977. It was an issue then, and then the argument was they don't have the expertise to run a utility company as big as GRU. And so that fight had been going on back and forth. They finally got it in the right hands to run it, but the powers to be in Alachua County, a very uber liberal progressive town, said, oh no, we're going to control it, and we're going to raise the prices because we know what we're doing. They don't have a clue. And again, that's why, people like me moved out. I know a lot of the liberals over there are real happy about that, but I'm happier.
Yeah. Well, just so people, if they're listening and that's a big issue for you, the injunction was granted, and it means that there's a stay basically on it shifting until it gets settled in this court thing, which I think ultimately will favor the city. Ultimately, that's my guess. But you probably got at least 6 more months of it staying under the current head, but I don't expect that to last. That's just my opinion of that. But I want to read you something because here, and then we'll get on to talk a little bit about Miss Nancy. But there was a candidate running for mayor of Minneapolis against the incumbent liberal Democrat mayor.
Right.
And that one went right down to the wire. This Somali guy who's nothing like, as far as charisma, like Mamdani, almost won that. And I want to point something out to you. This was a recent Gallup poll, and this is very telling whether or not about what happened on Tuesday, regardless of Trump hatred and all that. Gallup found that only 42% of Democrats said they have a positive view of capitalism, compared to 66% who asserted a positive view of socialism. Can we turn this around, Ted? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you can turn it around once they experience socialism. When Carol and I went on that cruise in Eastern Europe down to Danube, those people had just came out of communism in the late 80s, early 90s. So they went from communism to socialism, and they like socialism. Of course, they left communism. They don't know what a constitutional republic with a capitalist system is all about. I think all I have to do is look at the results of Mamdani's election. That's a constitutional republic that gives opportunity. Socialism does not give opportunity. It gives you kind of a stuck lifestyle is what it gives you. You're not gonna be the lowest of the low, and you're not gonna be the highest of the high. You're gonna be stuck in the middle.
Yeah, well, we certainly have our work cut out, Ted. That's why we need everybody's help for the show, because we obviously need to do a lot more educating, motivating, and activating people. Well, we got about 10 minutes left in the show, and I want to talk a little bit about the big news. Nancy Pelosi is calling it quits. Now, she's still got another year, but she's like 85 or something like that, and she's decided she's not going to run again. And I had a picture of her. I don't know why she's not running. She hasn't aged a day there, Ted. Look at that.
That's just hard to look at, John.
She's got good genes, man. And to be fair,
I can't look at that anymore.
To be fair, that is AI generated.
Okay, thank God.
But I want to play you this video, Ted. I don't know if you saw this or not, but there was a press conference after the election the next day, I think it was, on Capitol Hill, and Schumer was supposed to come out and start talking about what happened on the Tuesday election, but he was late getting there. There were several senators waiting, and Bernie was there, and some reporter asked him, aren't you going to answer some questions? So Bernie, never missing a chance, jumps up to the mic and hijacks the presser. I want to play a brief snippet of it because this shows you the internal, and it talks a little bit about Pelosi indirectly. Listen to Bernie Sanders and his response to what happened in the election. Check this out.
In New York when he won. party leadership is not supporting Plattner in Maine, and I think he's going to win. So I think it is, I think there is a growing understanding that leadership and defending the status quo and the inequalities that exist in America is not where the American people are. Well, the party leadership did not support Mamdani in New York, and he won. Party leadership is not supporting Plattner in Maine, and I think he's going to win. So I think it is, I think there is a growing understanding that leadership and defending the status quo and the inequalities that exist in America is not where the American people are. Well, the party leadership did not support Mamdani in New York.
Well, there you have it. Mr. Bernard Sanders is basically saying the old guard, not counting him, of course, needs to go, which could mean Pelosi, I suppose, because the socialists need to take over the Democratic Party. That is about as specific as you can get.
It really is, and it's a wake-up call to America to have people like him get in there and say it's time that the socialists take over. I mean, wake up. I mean, New York is going to be a test case. I mean, really. Of course, you've got pockets of that throughout the country. You look at the liberal cities and all that. But I think once they get a taste of that, people are going to run from that.
Yeah, well, we're talking about Nancy Pelosi. She made an announcement that she's retiring, and she's going to be there another year, but she's retiring. And I love the part where she says in it, she says, there's been no greater honor for me than to stand on the House floor and say, I speak for the people of San Francisco. And I'm thinking, really? Really? You're speaking for San Francisco literally has a poop map, not a great statue monument map, but a poop map as to not where to walk, where you're going to step in human feces on the streets. I mean, I kid you not. So really, Ted, I mean, she literally could say she stands for San Francisco. My God, man.
Well, again, she's in her gated community eating ice cream when everybody else is not. It's kind of like, what was it, Marie Antoinette, when everybody was rioting and pooping out in the street. She goes, starving. Just feed them cake. Just feed them cake and they'll be all right.
Well, that's kind of like when Pelosi was showing off her ice cream, cash during the middle of COVID and all. But I want to play, we don't have much time left, but I think people need to see some of this. I call it Pelosi's greatest hits. This is Pelosi admitting that in January 6th, that it was her responsibility to call in the National Guard. Check this out.
Yep.
We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean, the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
No, there's not a question of how they had. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
And the last thing she says there, Ted, I personally take responsibility for not calling in the National Guard. Just needs to know that. And so we'll talk about that in a second. I just want to let our producer know that I'm going to skip the next video. We're going to play the Trump vial video here in just a second. But what are your general thoughts about Nancy Pelosi leaving, Ted, and why she's leaving and all of that?
Well, I wish she would have left 10, 15 years ago. I think she's been very toxic to this country, to the process of this country. It's been blocking stuff, preventing stuff from going on. She's prevented this country from, building a stronger nation. She's led the charge to divide it. And it's her time. It's been past her time for her to step down. And when you look at Mamdani's, the AOCs, the Crockett's, and any of the other squad members, what I have learned, John, and they're doing this, and I have to commend them for doing it. I don't like it. You don't wait in. The old guard is you wait in line for your leadership position, kind of like the military. You just wait till it's your time. You put in enough time. In my opinion, leadership is something you don't wait in line for. leadership is something you take charge of. And you're seeing that with this new group of people. And Pelosi realizes that her days are done. She's going to be a has-been. And I hope that they rename the Rayburn room or the Cannon room in the Cannon office building, name it back to the Cannon room, because they named it the Pelosi room. And it's one of the most beautiful rooms up there. I'm glad to see she's gone, and I hope she takes that map of San Francisco so she doesn't step into poop.
Maybe she could be the poop tour guide. But San Francisco went from the jewel to the stool, I call it. It's unbelievable. But we don't have really much time left.
Pretty good there, John.
Yeah, jewel to the stool. That's what they did to San Francisco. I want to play this last little video clip, and we'll close out on this, because Nancy Pelosi is pretty nasty. I can only imagine now that she's going to be unleashed for a year, how nasty she's going to be. But listen to her parting shot, if you will, about Donald Trump. Check this out, and we'll close out.
So they separated the power. That's the beauty of the Constitution. Our founders did not want to have, again, how can I say this? It'll sound like I'm awful about Trump because he's just a vile creature. The worst thing on the face of the earth. But anyway.
You think he's the worst thing on the face of the earth?
I do, yeah. I do.
Why is that?
Because he's the President of the United States and he does not honor the Constitution.
She is beyond calling Trump Hitler. She is saying that President Trump is the most vile creature on the planet of the earth, not just human being, but creature. I mean, unbelievable. The hate just continues. But I will say this, Ted, and I'll let you close this out. She is a hell of a stock picker. So, if you want to build your portfolio, maybe you should follow Nancy Pelosi. Go ahead, Ted, close us out, man.
Well, people want to know what her legacy is. And John, as we know, the spoils go to the victor. So whatever party is in charge, they're going to write the words that they want to. And then you have to put in there the slant and the skew of big media. The people that control Facebooks and Wikipedias, they're going to write a very glowing thing about Nancy Pelosi instead of talking about the January 6th, where we knew that Trump had offered the National Guard and she never wanted them. And now she's saying, where are they? Why didn't we have them here? Well, because you didn't want them. And, so with that, we appreciate everybody watching. And we have a Florida-Kentucky game this weekend. And tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Let's cheer the Gators on. John, you have a great weekend, and I'll see you Monday. I'll be in the studio Monday.
Sounds good. Peace out, everybody.
Everybody take care, and thank you.